All right, you're going to get rolling and let whoever join in. Thank you guys for joining on. We try to keep these to 30 minutes or less and get you guys back to work. So I appreciate you getting on here with us. To begin with, I'm just going to share my screen out, and then we will also record this and send it out along with some of the others as well. And, we do these every Tuesday, so I would really recommend, if you can, you try to get maybe 2 of these a month in and just kind of find out what's going on and the latest that we're doing. So I've got the screen shared out so you guys can kind of get a visual. Really, this just helps kind of understand what you could do by moving things to our cloud infrastructure. You know, in the traditional method, you're installing servers out on site, and you're putting in a firewall, you're putting a backup out to the cloud. And so you've got to do a lot of that on site. And when you move people into our cloud, you get to essentially put those under one login, under one umbrella. So you can just keep expanding your number of client base. And it's just quite a bit easier to manage. You're not, of course, having to go on site, and you get to log in and see everyone in one spot. So that is true for all the servers are in one area, as well as if you would move people and use our agents, which will do backup and computer management, essentially virus software, Windows patches, some of those pieces. You could essentially have those all under one umbrella as well. So the big thing I want to talk about today is really selling and talking to clients about the cloud. And traditionally, you know, every so many years, we'll replace their server on site, schedule a time to go do that. And that's kind of been the ongoing model for many years. So what I tried to do is just give us a comparison of taking that model where we are going to replace the server, put them on some sort of a service plan, and then come back in 4 years and do it all over again. So this gives us a really good way to compare if you would move them over to our cloud servers today, what they would pay. You would still make your same service margin for maintenance, monitoring, some of those things. So in this example, you can put together how much their server would cost typically, how much you would charge to do the management of it as well, and kind of add that together. I'm going to mute everybody just so it's a little quieter. If you guys have questions, feel free to come off of mute and ask questions, of course. So, okay, over on the left-hand side, you've got your server. I did about a $4,000 server with $1,200 worth of installing and getting it put together on site. Then I did $100 a month for monitoring and for doing patches and those kind of things. So yours may be more or less than this example, but when I did that over a 4-year, 48-month term, it's about $200 a month. And then over on the right, I essentially did the same thing. If you were going to move them to a cloud server with a router, with an IP address, with some bandwidth, their cost is really in that example about $80 a month. So it's pretty reasonable that way. And then you can add on your monitoring service, same exact margin. And so ultimately, as I'm looking at it, you know, I think you can pretty competitively give them a comparison of what they're doing with the physical server today. So maybe even save them a few dollars to do it. And so if you want help working through any of these with any clients, I'd be happy to help you guys kind of walk through that. And one thing I recommend is if you can set up calls with some of the clients and just kind of walk through this process with them and give them this as a possibility for their future, some of the things they could do. So I'm going to switch to the next one here. So kind of along those lines, I think about, you know, what are some of the things that I would think are most important to the end business owners and the clients you guys are out talking to. And it definitely goes back to the quality and stability of what they have, and they weigh that against how much it costs, right? They don't want to spend it more than they need to have a good quality solution. So as I thought about those things, I wanted to get some pretty key benefits that I think they have above and beyond just having a good server. Because when you move someone to the cloud, there's a few things that the client may not think about that's good to point out, kind of walk through with them. So some of those things being, they don't have to buy another server every so many years and go through the process of swapping it out, new hardware. We do all that stuff on the back end, so they're always on a relatively new level of hardware in the back, Intel-based hardware in the data center, high-level NetApp storage, just really a lot of high-quality pieces there. Then they don't have the need to own and manage and maintain the local servers, the hardware, any of that stuff anymore. The scalability, so you could start these folks on a small server and see how it works. They may need to bump up a little bit if they're having speed issues as they have more users or if they add users on. But traditionally, when you put a server on site, you're powering that to last 5 years, to take on the maximum potential that the customer may have. Meanwhile, maybe they only use 10% of the power. So the server sits idle a lot on site, meaning we sold them a lot higher of a server than they may have needed at the time. So the good thing about a cloud server like ours is that you can start them out at a low horsepower and then gradually increase that as they need to. And there's no downtime to increase that up or down. And again, the client hardware then is not outdated in 3, 4, or 5 years, because sometime during that process, we've already refreshed the hardware behind the scenes that runs their servers. Probably the biggest benefit, I think, to the client when thinking of moving to the cloud server is that the downtime. So we've essentially had 100% uptime since we took over and bought the data center. So they don't have to worry about coming into work and have the server be down for 3 days, which can happen when a server just suddenly would lose a motherboard or something major that you have to order and replace and go through all those pieces. So essentially, it's like buying a server and an insurance policy, kind of all mixed together is the way that I think about it. Additionally, over on the right side, Windows licensing for the server is included. The security aspect, you can put an advanced firewall in front of any of our networks and have always updated top-of-the-line virus protection and security as well. And the internet speeds are no longer a concern. So especially in the day of COVID and everyone being remote, you've got all these people trying to access the servers going from their homes through the firewalls back into the small internet in the office. That can be a bottleneck, a slowdown point. And meanwhile, the internet in our data center is very large, and you won't have that same issue. So just a little bit about the data center itself. So our owner, Joe Shields, was able to negotiate and buy the data center from a joint venture of Sprint and AT&T. So a lot of times we think of data centers as being potentially small. Ours is pretty massive. We did tour it pretty recently, and it's a bunker style data center. There's also a backup generator that runs every Tuesday to make sure that in the event of a power outage, the data center generator is going to kick on and be able to run everything. And then if the generator would potentially not work, there's a backup battery system that's GE batteries that will run for like 10 hours for the backup system for the data center. So essentially, the long story short of it is that the system is really going to run well. Downtime is going to be very minimal. Typically, it's going to be a maintenance sort of thing where on a Sunday, we're going to go in and do a little maintenance, and it's pre-scheduled, you're notified, all those things. So a couple of the tools that we give you guys as part of your partner program, and I think it's important to say that when you partner with AWS and Azure, they expect you guys to be the expert. They expect you to know all the things, learn all the things, get the certifications, do all the work. And it's hard when you need help. So that's probably one of the big benefits is that we have a dedicated cloud engineer to help you pre-sales, to talk with clients with you as one of your employees if needed, and then to help you actually migrate things over. So the first thing we do is we've got our cloud calculator worksheet. Eric has been busy working on a new model of that we'll give you guys when it's available. It'll be a little better than the one we've been using even. But typically the complaint I would hear with a lot of the other large companies is that it's hard to know what it's going to cost, excuse me, and what the bandwidth might cost. And so we've at least taken that first step and giving you a nice way to estimate what something would cost, bandwidth, add a backup, add some servers. So that's kind of the first piece we give you. The second piece we can do is we can help you set up a prototype environment. So if you have a customer that you think could be a good candidate, you can have the conversation with them about the cloud and the benefits. And I'll send this PowerPoint out to you guys afterwards so you could use some of this as well. But have the conversation with them, and then if they're still not buying into it, offer to set it up for a week or two and have them check it out and try it. And that's something that we can help you guys build out. The third one there, the ability to buy out the remaining depreciation. So a good example, let's say they have 1 year left they bought the server, they've depreciated it out, and they have a year left, and they don't want to give up that value and just go to a new server on the cloud. That's a big value to them. So we will essentially give them credit toward our cloud for the amount. So just get with me on that, and we'll be able to help give the value to them so they can think about moving over today instead of waiting 2 years or a year. So give them a reason to maybe make that change now, especially if you can show them that this really won't cost more than you spend today on a server over 4 years, reverting back to what we talked about a little earlier. We can buy existing hardware, and while that's not a big thing, if they just have a really old small server, it's not a huge value, but it's something you can offer them. And it also could be potentially of value if you're talking to some larger clients that did put in a data center. A lot of data centers are being decommissioned the last couple of years, so you could potentially go into a deal like that, help a partner of yours move to your own cloud, and we could buy the hardware from them, making it easier for them to make that move. Most of you guys have met Eric. He is our dedicated cloud engineer. He really will help you with thinking things through, coming up with what things would cost potentially on moving, helping you migrate things, and working with our tech support team and making that connection for them when you need it. And I think it's a really great thing that we don't charge you by the hour. If you would get help with any of the big companies, typically that's not free, that's not included. They're going to push you to a certified partner, gold partner of some sort, and you're going to be paying hourly for that. So just a quick recap, this is typically the main offerings of the channel. You all probably have had some exposure with this so far, but from the ability to back up any existing networks you guys have out in the world, to being able to do disaster recovery by creating a server, moving their server over to it if their server went down, to standalone file storage and firewalls and all these other things. So that's a little bit about what I wanted to run through. Wanted to open it up for some questions if you guys have some to throw out. You'll have to come off of mute if you do have some.
So I guess I haven't seen the price schedule on resources. Is there anything you can share regarding cost or ability to put this out for resale?
Yeah. Yep. So in your email, and I can resend this as well, but we've got the cost worksheet. The first tab of that, it actually has the per month component pricing for CPU and RAM, storage, all those things. Also, it's in your master agreement in the PDF there. You'll have a copy of all the pricing. But I'll resend out this worksheet for you so you can, what I like about it is you can just really quickly go in and put in how much RAM, CPU, storage, and then at the bottom it kicks out a monthly cost for you. And then you can even add a margin. So let's say I want to do a 75% margin, which would cover your monitoring, your patches, you're doing all the work on the servers. Then you can get a monthly cost for the customer there on the bottom.
Did you say we already have this spreadsheet? Because I can't remember if you sent this out, at least to me, Alex.
Yeah, it typically would have already gone out, but I can definitely resend that. Was that Greg or who was saying that?
Yeah, that was Greg.
Okay. Yeah.
And for clients who use Office for remote desktop purposes and all, I forget, but did we say they need to have E3 licenses installed there?
I don't know that answer. Potentially, Eric, is that something you may know what he's referring to on that?
I haven't heard that we necessarily. I mean, if you're going to do a terminal services, it's probably recommended. We have the desktop as a service coming in the future, so that may be beneficial in the future to have. You can have a lower license, so it might lower some of those costs. But right now, it might be beneficial as far as the terminal services side goes.
Okay, so for now, we're only we're not doing using this for desktop as a service
Okay.
type implementations. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So typically, for desktop, the options we have now is you can use remote desktop licenses to log in, and you can create a server that could run in desktop mode. So it's a workaround essentially. But long term, we do plan to have our own virtual desktop solution. It's just short term. Microsoft has made that very challenging to use their desktop operating systems in a multi-tenant environment like this.
Okay.
So technically we could do it. Legally, Microsoft doesn't let us, is the short answer there.
Yeah, and I believe that multi-tenancy is why you have to have that E3 if it's loaded on a server.
Right. I think Microsoft requires that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what I'll do is resend to every partner the cloud calculator and then the presentation I used today to kind of talk about some of those benefits in case you'd like to kind of tailor that to your own client base and be able to kind of walk them through a more real world example of what you would think they would be up against for their server and your guys' costs with them. Because I think if I'm the owner of that business and for about the same amount of month, I could have a server that never needs replaced, typically never goes down. That's pretty compelling. Even if it's going to cost me another $50 a month, it's probably worth doing.
Yeah, what is the sweet spot for using this server? Is it for putting, their server class applications and things, installing those on there? Or can it be used for, QuickBooks is what I run into all the time. They want some place to host QuickBooks, which isn't a server-based application. It's just needs a desktop. But is that going to be an okay thing for us to use your solution for?
Yeah, so QuickBooks is a really common solution that you would put a server in here and connect a site-to-site funnel from their office into here for the ones that are still in the office and the other remote ones and connect in there as well. And essentially any application that's not cloud-based that needs a server to live, file servers, Exchange, Active Directory, all billing applications, clinical systems, electronic records, optometry stuff, CPA software. So yeah, essentially all those kind of things where, you know, they're still going to need a server. You can do it pretty affordably here compared to, you know, another cloud solution, I think.
Okay, good. Thank you. I remember talking with you about that initially, so thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. Any other questions? We got a couple minutes left. We're going to be early today, it looks like, but that's better than late.
You said we can run our own endpoint software on these machines, like Sophos endpoint, Intercept X or whatever?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, maybe Eric could comment on it if he knows anything about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So whatever management tools and things like that that you'd want to run on here, absolutely. I mean, we run, yeah, and that's also something we could provide for you, but definitely, you know, this is your environment that you would, you know, you would otherwise manage remotely.
And to expand on that a little bit, so some folks that are part of a bigger franchise, you know, you already have tools for monitoring and patches and some of those things. So you would still use those, and then you could just use our standalone backup piece, you know, if you wanted to try that on its own. Even for the machines you're managing out in the world, you could look at comparison of what it could do for you to move to our backup. You'll save a bit of money there, and it's just super easy to set it up and use it.
Sure.
Mentioned medical solution or doctors or clinics software. So just to get an idea, what is the focus of your clients so far that are using this cloud? Are there any success stories that we can leverage, or can we focus on a particular direction? Or
yeah, so that's a good question. So our division is the cloud and the channel, and we also have a very large enterprise side of our company that's in Des Moines, and so we probably do about 30 to 40 million dollars of cloud servers today. A lot of those are hospitals, and we do a lot for like the state of Iowa and the state of Nebraska government. So those are kind of the key areas where we already do quite a bit with, that I think you could find some good targets in that: government, county, cities, schools, hospitals, those kind of places that typically you may not work with already, but could be an option to try to get relationships with.
sure.
Any other questions? Well, we'll stay on. I'll stay on for a couple more minutes. If anyone did want to stay on and ask me more questions, feel free. If you don't have any questions, feel free to jump off. And as I said, I'll send out the items here, as I said, in a little bit. But thanks for your time today, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Talk to you next
Thank
week.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great one. Thanks for the info. We'll see you soon.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Frank.
Frank. Appreciate it.